Have you ever been sitting, across a desk from someone representing a really large organization or institution?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Usually in a very uncomfortable chair.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And they're explaining a decision that directly affects you, and their tone is, super professional.
Right.
But something about their explanation just doesn't add up. Like,
Yeah.
you're listening to the words, but your intuition is screaming that there is this massive gap in the logic somewhere.
It is just a universally uncomfortable experience. I mean, what usually happens in that moment is a kind of paralysis.
Yeah.
Because you're just one individual, right? And you're sitting across from this entity that has an entire, like, bureaucratic structure behind it.
Yeah.
Going up against that can feel, well, it feels like trying to negotiate with a brick wall.
Totally. You sit there nodding, but inside you're thinking, the math is simply not mathing here.
Exactly.
So today's deep dive is about that exact feeling. And I guess more importantly, what to do when you realize asking nicely just isn't going to get you anywhere.
Right, because at a certain point, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So how do you push back when a school district or a massive corporation or a government agency hold all the files and therefore, all the leverage?
Yeah, that's the core question.
It is. And we are looking at some really fascinating documentation today from a project called the 209 Audit.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's a public records and accountability project based out of the Central Valley in California. It was founded by a guy named David Sakaros.
And this source material, it's a remarkable case study in how to completely flip that power dynamic you were just talking about.
Yeah, flip it on its head.
Right. We're looking at what is essentially a masterclass in holding bureaucratic systems accountable, but not through shouting or being aggressive, but through this really meticulous discipline.
So our mission today is to unpack how one person's incredibly frustrating, professional experience didn't just end in, venting on social media or giving up.
Right, which is what most of us do.
Which is what I would do, probably. But instead, it was transformed into this disciplined regional tool for civic accountability. We're going to extract kind of a playbook for navigating systems of power in your own life.
I love that.
So to understand the 209 audit, we have to start at ground zero, right? Let's look at the emotional and the practical catalyst that basically ignited this whole thing.
Yeah, it began with an origin story of basically professional disruption.
Right.
The documentation notes that the founder experienced a termination from the MUHSD system.
And just for context, MUHSD stands for the Merced Union High School District.
Right, thank you. And anyone who has, gone through a sudden shift in their employment status, especially within a sprawling public system like a school district, the immediate aftermath is just a whirlwind of confusion.
Oh, absolutely.
You're panicked and you just want answers.
And the source material highlights that, following this event, informal conversations completely failed to answer his questions.
Yeah.
He was trying to figure out what happened, how the decisions were actually made, and critically, he wanted to know if the quote-unquote official account he was being given actually matched the documented record.
And that emphasis on informal conversations, that is the key here.
How so?
Well, when a large institution makes a decision about you, they frequently attempt to manage the fallout through informal channels. Like, they might suggest grabbing a coffee or a quick phone call to, just explain our thinking here.
Right. They try to keep it casual.
Exactly. It feels human. It feels conversational. But structurally, it is entirely designed to give you a plausible explanation without handing over an actual record.
It makes me think of software.
Oh, interesting. How do you mean?
Like the informal conversation, the friendly HR chat, the public relations statement, that is the user interface.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. It's the glossy front end that's designed to keep the user calm and just navigate them where the company wants them to go.
Yeah.
But the actual documented records, the emails, the internal policy decisions, that's the source code. That shows what the program is actually designed to execute behind the scenes.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The user interface is built for comfort, but the source code is the unvarnished reality.
Exactly.
And in the context of a public institution, focusing on the interface means you are relying on, essentially, vapor.
Yeah.
The source material notes this crucial realization the founder had, which is that statements, meetings, and verbal assurances are fundamentally not the same as a record.
So I want to push on the psychology of this for a second, because society trains us to be polite.
Oh, absolutely. Don't rock the boat.
Right. We're taught to trust the person in the suit behind the desk and to just accept that UI. At what point does a person realize they have to stop accepting verbal explanations and demand to see the source code?
That shift usually happens when you spot a glaring contradiction,
Like they catch them in a lie.
basically. You realize that your memory of an event or, your understanding of a specific policy directly conflicts with the narrative the institution is spinning.
And that's a terrifying moment.
It is. Because here is where we hit the core of the power imbalance. An individual's memory is treated by the system as subjective, fallible, and easily dismissed. Oh, you must have misunderstood.
Right, right.
But the institution's official narrative, even if it is completely fabricated, carries the weight of authority.
Simply because they have the letterhead.
Exactly. They have the letterhead, they have the legal department, and they have the filing cabinets.
Yeah.
Public institutions have an immense amount of power over people's work, their livelihoods, their futures. And that power is at its most absolute and unchecked when their internal actions remain undocumented.
Wow.
Because if there is no record of how a decision was made, the institution can basically reverse engineer any justification after the fact.
Oh, and just stamp it with their authority.
Exactly.
Okay, so if relying on memory guarantees you lose against this machine, how do you force the machine to communicate on your terms?
You have to change your language.
Right. The founder had to completely change his approach. He transitioned away from those, informal, frustrating conversations and shifted entirely to formal public records requests.
He stopped trying to talk to the people and started talking to the system itself.
I love that.
And this is where the project evolves from a personal grievance into a highly disciplined framework.
Okay, so let's get into that framework. The source material lays out that this methodology is built on 5 specific questions.
Right.
When looking at any institutional decision, the 209 audit asks, number 1, what was written? Number 2, who received it? Number 3, what decision was made? Number 4, when did it happen? And number 5, what policy, communication, or document supports the explanation?
And those 5 questions, they function as a structural trap for a bureaucracy that might be trying to, hide something or spin a narrative.
Yeah, run me through that.
We'll take the first one. What was written forces them to produce the foundational text.
Right.
And what decision was made demands a clear, unambiguous outcome. It eliminates all that wishy-washy language institutions just love to use.
I totally get asking for what was written, but I want to pause on question 2, which is who received it?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Why is who received a document so vital? Often it feels like, as a citizen, we just want the final decision. Why do we care who was CC'd?
Because who received it establishes the chain of custody.
Oh, okay.
It tells you exactly who is in the loop and at what level of the hierarchy. Like, if a controversial decision was made and the superintendent claims they had no idea it was happening,
Oh, right.
but the records show they were CC'd on 4 separate emails about it, well, that destroys the plausible deniability right there.
Wow, yeah, they can't pretend they didn't know.
Exactly. You aren't just looking at the action anymore. You are mapping the network of accountability.
That completely changes the dynamic. And then you have when did it happen, which obviously forces a timeline.
Right.
And what policy supports the explanation.
Yeah.
Which removes their ability to just say, it was a judgment call.
Yep. They have to point to the rule book.
So let's walk through how this actually plays out day to day for someone to illustrate this.
Sure.
Say a controversial vendor contract is suddenly canceled by a city department.
Yeah.
And you are the business owner who just lost your livelihood. What does submitting these questions look like in practice?
Day to day, it means stepping out of the phone calls. You stop calling them.
Okay.
Instead, you draft a formal, legally binding request under your state's Public Records Act, or FOIA if it's a federal thing.
Right, with the Freedom of Information Act.
Exactly. You submit your request asking for all correspondence regarding your contract cancellation between specific dates, hitting those 5 criteria we just talked about. And now, the institution's legal team receives it.
Not the PR team.
Crucially, not the PR team. The PR team might try to manage the public perception, sure, but they cannot legally block a records request.
Right.
The legal department has to respond within a statutory time frame. They literally have to pull emails, memos, calendar invites.
And I imagine they don't love doing that.
Oh, they hate it. Often the institution will push back. They'll claim the request is too broad, or they'll cite exemptions to try and redact information. It creates immense friction.
But the friction is kind of the point, isn't it?
Friction is absolutely the point. You are forcing them to spend time and legal resources justifying their opacity on the record.
Which brings up the legal weight of this whole mechanism. The guiding philosophy behind all of this is a phrase from the project that I just love: activism with receipts.
Yes, such a powerful concept.
Right. The source text emphasizes that this is not about being loud, it's not about being personal, and it's certainly not about what is politically convenient.
No, it's very clinical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is strictly about examining dates, correspondence, and unanswered questions.
And that is a stark departure from how we usually conceptualize activism today.
Totally. I mean, we live in a world of opinion-based arguments, especially online. People write angry posts, they protest outside buildings, they circulate petitions on social media.
Right.
Does this unemotional, paperwork-heavy approach actually threaten an institution more than a massive public outcry, like a viral hashtag or something?
Honestly, it does.
Really?
Yeah, because institutions are built to weather emotional storms.
That makes sense.
They have entire departments dedicated to crisis communication. They will release a calming statement. They'll promise to do better. They'll wait for the news cycle to burn out.
And then change absolutely nothing internally.
Exactly. Public outrage is literally factored into their risk management models.
But a public records request sidesteps that entire apparatus.
Completely sidesteps it, because the law dictates how they must respond to records requests. Like if an institution puts a lie in a press release, it's just bad PR. But if they willfully withhold or falsify documents in response to a formal legal request, they are stepping into the territory of liability, fraud, and really severe legal consequences.
You can't spin a timeline.
No. They cannot spin their way out of a timeline that doesn't match their internal emails.
There is a quote from the source material that really anchors this entire concept for me. It says, quote, "Records are one of the few tools ordinary people have to test whether a public institution is operating as it says it is."
Yeah, that's the thesis right there. And it highlights this massive psychological and structural transformation for the individual doing it.
How so?
Well, you move from being a passive recipient of a bureaucratic decision, basically just taking what they hand you, to becoming an active auditor of the system.
Going back to our analogy, you're opening up the back end of the software to see what commands are really driving the machine.
Perfectly said.
Okay, so we've established how this works on an individual level.
Yep.
But what really fascinates me is how this methodology scaled into a broader ecosystem.
Oh, this is where it gets really ambitious.
Right, because if this framework works for one person's dispute with a single school district, what happens when it's applied to an entire region?
You start to map the DNA of regional power.
The founder realized that public agencies all across the 209 region, and that refers to the area code for the Central Valley in California. By the way, they make decisions every single day that affect students, workers, families, neighborhoods.
Constantly.
Yet ordinary people completely lack the knowledge to request or track the records behind those decisions.
Right, which creates a massive asymmetry of information.
Yeah.
The institution knows everything, and the public knows only what the institution's PR department chooses to share. Accountability is basically impossible when the public doesn't even know where the light switch is.
So to turn the lights on, the 209 audit evolved into what the documentation calls a living public index.
Yes.
And this index tracks 4 exact things. First, public record holders.
Yeah.
So the agencies, school districts, cities, departments. Second, reference subjects, meaning the people, businesses, or projects that are involved. Third, published documents, the actual requests, correspondence, and productions. And fourth, the current status, which is like a readable summary of the final response and whatever the next documented action is.
Tracking those 4 distinct categories, it is an incredibly sophisticated approach to data.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, this isn't just a list of grievances on a blog. It is a relational database.
But break down how that actually works in practice. How does tracking a reference subject alongside a public record holder expose anything meaningful?
Let's use our earlier scenario of a city vendor contract.
Okay.
A single citizen might request records on why a specific landscaping company was awarded a massive city contract.
Right.
In isolation, that just looks like one questionable decision by one public record holder, say, the city council.
Like a one-off thing.
Exactly. But if you have a living index, you cross-reference that landscaping company as a reference subject.
Ah, I see.
Suddenly, you might see that the same company also secured unbid contracts with the local school district, the county water board, and the regional transit authority.
Wow. So you expose a pattern that is completely invisible if you only look at one isolated incident?
You expose the entire web of influence.
That's wild.
You might find that the same 2 or 3 decision makers sit on different boards across those agencies, routing public money to the same preferred vendors.
Yeah.
By publishing the documents and the current status centrally, you remove the isolation that bureaucracies rely on to hide things.
Right. They rely on us being disconnected.
Exactly. You create a trail of breadcrumbs for journalists, other citizens, or even state auditors to follow.
It's like a public library catalog for civic behavior.
That's a great way to describe it.
And this deepens when you look at the founder's own background.
Yeah.
The source material notes he is a doctoral leadership student, and he's focusing on how institutional accountability, access to information, and public decision-making shape people's real lives.
Right, so he is taking complex academic theory regarding organizational leadership and applying it directly to the messy reality of local government.
Yes.
It bridges the gap between high-level research and the practical reality of a citizen just trying to get a straight answer out of a local bureaucracy. It's essentially applied action research.
And this research has grown into a broader ecosystem based in Atwater, California.
Right, it's expanded.
It's not just the audit itself anymore. There is 209 Media, which operates as a Central Valley newsletter and like a social channel for accountability reporting, really telling the stories behind the records.
Right.
And then there's 209 Connect, which acts as the umbrella bringing all of this together, basically combining lived experience with local action.
It creates a complete self-sustaining infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because the audit gathers the raw, undeniable data. Then 209 Media translates that data into narratives the public can easily understand.
Right, the story part of it.
Exactly. And finally, 209 Connect mobilizes the community based on those facts.
I do want to include a really clear disclaimer from the source material here, because they explicitly state this project organizes information and does not replace legal advice, court findings, or official determinations.
Right, that's an important distinction.
It's an evolving public information project.
And that clarifies their exact role in the ecosystem. They aren't acting as a judge or a lawyer.
No.
They are acting as a mirror. They are simply holding up the institution's own documents for the public to see.
Which is often the most damning evidence possible, right?
Absolutely.
What stands out to me the most about this entire evolution is that it demonstrates what is possible when one person simply refuses to accept a non-answer.
Yeah, the persistence.
They identified the right thing to do, they used lawful tools, and they simply kept going.
Well, bureaucracies rely heavily on attrition.
What do you mean by that?
They operate on the assumption that if they make a process boring enough, complicated enough, or just slow enough, you will eventually give up and go away.
Right, we'll just wait them out.
Exactly. The 209 audit is what happens when someone refuses to go away and instead builds a system to outlast the bureaucracy.
If we synthesize everything we've talked about today, the ultimate goal of building this massive public ledger of receipts isn't just to criticize institutions, is it?
No, not at all.
Because criticism is cheap and easy. Anyone can complain on the internet.
Right.
The goal, according to the source material, is to develop a practical, evidence-based model for public service.
Yes. By making these systems more visible and much harder to ignore, this project turns a personal grievance into a public resource.
I just love that phrasing. Turning personal leverage into a public resource means that the next person who gets fired unfairly, or the next parent who wants to know why a curriculum was abruptly changed,
Right.
or even the next citizen wondering why a city contract was awarded to a specific vendor, they don't have to start from scratch.
Exactly. They have a template and a methodology ready to deploy. They don't have to rely on those informal, undocumented conversations designed to pacify them. They can walk into that situation knowing exactly which 5 questions to ask and knowing they have the legal right to demand the written proof.
You aren't asking for a favor anymore. You are initiating an audit.
Yes.
And institutions behave very differently when they know they're being audited, even if it's just by a private citizen armed with a public records request.
Oh, completely differently.
Well, let's bring this all together for you. We started this deep dive looking at a single unanswered question following a termination from the Merced Union High School District.
Right.
We watched that initial frustration crystallize into this really rigorous, unemotional methodology of asking 5 specific questions, a true framework of activism with receipts.
A total paradigm shift.
And we saw how that methodology scaled into a regional ecosystem of civic infrastructure across the Central Valley, turning private leverage into a public good.
It really stands as a masterclass in converting systemic friction into structural accountability.
It does. Now, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Returning to that uncomfortable scenario we talked about at the very beginning.
Okay.
Remember sitting across the desk, nodding along, to an explanation that felt like the math wasn't massing.
The friendly verbal handshake.
Right, the UI. Here is my challenge to you. Think about a public system or institution that currently holds some kind of power over your own life. It could be your local school board, a city zoning committee, or some massive state agency.
Yep.
If you were to apply the 209 audit standard to that institution today, meaning you completely discard all the verbal assurances and glossy PR you've been given, and you rely exclusively on what can be proven through documented records, what hidden forces or systemic gaps might suddenly become visible to you.
Wow. Yeah, once you realize the source code is the only thing that actually runs the machine, the whole landscape looks entirely different.
It really does. You will never look at an informal chat the same way again.